Hello, welcome everyone to the Gray Decision Intelligence Demand Trends monthly webinar series, where we help higher education leaders improve their odds of making smarter program decisions. As we wait for everyone to join, wanted to let you know my news feed just informed me that the Powerball jackpot has reached $663 million. So if you don't hear from me next week, hey Bob, just kidding. I love my job, Bob. I'll be here. But while we cannot promise you the winning lottery numbers, my GrayDI panelists and I can offer something far more reliable: the data and insights you need to identify program opportunities, strengthen your academic portfolio, and make informed decisions about where to start, stop, or grow. Please feel free to submit questions using the Q&A or the chat at the bottom of your screen. We have a great turnout today, and we will answer as many live questions as time allows. And there is a real chance to win a prize of esteemed value today. Stick around for the second half of the session when we reveal our program of the month. Submit your correct guess to info@graydi.us, and you can win a full scorecard report for a program of your choice. Take a moment right now to open your email box and type in the address so you are ready. info@graydi.us. We'll also send everyone a link to the slides and the recording within the next day or so. So to get us started, I will hand things over to someone who knows that successful program decisions are not a matter of luck. The founder of Gray Decision Intelligence and author of Start, Stop, or Grow, Bob Atkins.
Thank you very much, and welcome everyone. I'm Bob Atkins, and I am the CEO and founder of Gray Associates and the curator of data from Gray that we provide every month. So, my friends, thank you very much for joining me. I know you're all crazy busy, even in the summer, and I very much appreciate your time and attention. So let's get started. Today, we're going to talk about what a program evaluation system is, just so you're aware of our point of view on the overall nature of a program evaluation system. We're going to talk about student demand, some indicators of employment, and we'll do a program of the month. And this is your opportunity to win. If you can guess what this program is, you win a free scorecard. And I'll tell you, you're really good if you can guess what this one is. I know I couldn't. So we may have some consolation prizes as well. And then lastly, I'd like to show you something we've been working on, analyzing market share to identify local opportunities. And I'm going to finish with an idea around Workforce Pell that I want to share with all of you and get your reactions to a way of analyzing the opportunity for Workforce Pell in your markets. So without further ado, let's get started. So a program evaluation system. First of all, for all of you who work with Gray, I apologize for the redundancy. But many folks don't really understand what a program evaluation system could be. So it's more than just data. Yes, we do need data. We need about markets, what students want, what employers need, and we'll share a lot of that data today. You also need information about the margins on your program. That's student revenue minus instructional cost. Why is that important? Because that pays the bills in most cases for institutions. So without those margins, we can't fund our mission. So we're not for profits in most cases. We don't make money as a purpose of our organization, but we do need to run sustainable financials for our academic programs in order to achieve our mission. Then we have academics and the performance against academic metrics, whether that's the rigor of the program relative to the standards for your institution, pass rates on exams like the NCLEX, or the ability to simply get students through a program to graduation effectively. So those are the kinds of metrics that are important, but metrics aren't good enough by themselves. Program evaluation requires judgment and participation. So the first part is you've got to engage the right people in your institution in the program evaluation process. If they're not inside the tent, I promise they'll be outside the tent making trouble if you make decisions without them. You've got to give them the right information. This really helps to diffuse some of the politics that often gets associated with program evaluation. If you can have good, reliable information that everybody can see, the rationale for decisions becomes much more transparent, and people's willingness to trust and use the results increases. Then you get them all in a room. and have them evaluate the program as a group. This typically involves 30 to 50 people, deans, program chairs, admissions, marketing, president, provost, in one room, looking at the data, making decisions based on the data. And then ultimately, those are preliminary decisions that run through the normal review process in your organization. So that's a program evaluation system. It's data, it's software, and it's an effective participative process that brings those things together to inform decisions. Now, let's take a look at our data. We're going to start with Google keyword searches. How to read this chart. We're looking at data from 2024 in the dark blue, 2025 search volumes in the medium blue, and this year, 2026, in the light blue, and we're current through June. As you can see, all these numbers for prior months have been down. So we have to interpret this month in that context. We are down 30% this month, but it's interesting. The annual average decline this year so far is 31%. So I believe what we're seeing, rather than a fundamental decline in interest in higher ed, is a change in search behavior from Google search to AI search, which is not included here yet. Someday we'll figure out how to do that. I can't figure it out yet. If anybody has any ideas how we can track search volumes in AI, I'd love to hear it. And I don't mean to be at all sarcastic. I really would love to know. So this is, while it's down a lot year over year, the monthly change is diminishing. Each month has been, as I said, about an average of 31%. This is 30%. So I'd say search volumes are stabilizing at a lower level. What's growing in this context? Well, we've got a lot of engineering that's ticking up, particularly career and technical education and engineering-related fields. So we've got 4 CTE fields: electrical communications engineering tech, sterile processing tech, construction heavy equipment operation, and clinical lab science or medical tech. As we go through some of these things, both on student demand and employment, I would encourage you to look for the impact of AI. It is not crystal clear yet in all these programs, and it's easy to kind of believe that it's in there driving this. As we go forward, we'll take a closer look at it over time to try and tease out what AI is driving versus general economic growth and student interest. We've got a lot of healthcare here: exercise physiology, nursing practice, health education and fitness, and dental hygiene. So 4 of our top 10 are health related. And then we have one other program, computer programming general, at 5% growth. Now, another indicator of student demand is spring enrollment. And as we think about this, enrollment's a very current indicator. What we're just showing in Google was a forward-looking indicator, people looking for programs that they'll take in the future. Enrollment tells us what people are taking almost right now. This is spring enrollment of 2026, so it's very current information, unlike iPads, which is 3 years old at this point and represents data that student choices that were made several years before that when people picked their majors. So spring enrollment in certificate programs is up 10%. This should be very good news, especially for community colleges, as well as others who offer certificate programs. Very steady growth in demands for certificates. I have to say this one is troublesome for me because I don't understand the economics of certificates. In most cases, these would be very difficult to recruit for and run admissions, given how short they are, and still have that turn out to be contribution positive. I believe it's possible, but I think it's quite tough. So it'll be interesting to track enrollment here and see how our clients are able to monetize this in a way that makes it financially sustainable. What's growing? Not much healthcare I was interested to see. We've got nursing, patient care aid, and licensed vocational nursing. Now, this is not because there isn't interest in healthcare, as you'll see in later charts. It's just that there are not very many healthcare programs that are at the certificate level, though there are a few, maybe even quite a few, but not sort of in comparison to all the other things that are out there. Career and technical education is up 4 programs here in our top 10: HVAC maintenance tech, air auto mechanics tech, firefighting, and electrician. Many of you may be looking at this HVAC and saying, that might be people being hired to do data center cooling work. And indeed it might. But I've done a little tiny bit of research into this. And the skills required to do HVAC inside a data center are really demanding and highly technical. They're way beyond what you would need for normal construction. Very specific kinds of welding that have to be done because a particle of metal in a cooling system for computers could shut down a server if it gets into the cooling for that server. Same goes for plumbing, by the way. So it's not that people who do HVAC or plumbing can't do these jobs, but there's a whole bunch of incremental training that they may need in order to do them in a data center. I think that's actually an opportunity. Right now, I believe it's being done primarily by the data center, the firms backing the data centers like Meta and Google. So they're in effect having to train their own folks to do this. When I say that, I mean existing plumbers get hired and then have to be trained in order to work in these data centers. So an interesting opportunity there, but don't mistake a regular old HVAC guy for somebody who can wander into a data center and be working on HVAC systems there. And as I mentioned, the same is true for plumbers. Here we got healthcare, a few others as well. Criminal justice and corrections, meat and potato program at the certificate level, legal assistant, paralegal. I'm wondering what's going to happen to that with AI, frankly, as a job. General studies, and finally, business administration and management in general. Let's turn to associate programs, up 2% this year in the spring. So again, good news for the community colleges in our audience. We've got growth here. It has slowed down. This was 5%. We're down to 2% and hope that continues. The other thing we ought to keep in mind is the fastest growing segment in higher ed is students under 18. And you may scratch your head and say, well, wait a second, how can that be? What students are under 18 that are going to college? That's dual enrollment. So what we see here may well be dual enrollment. So these students may or may not be showing up to your campus, but they are enrolled in college. And I'm sure you've heard the stories of students who get their associate's degree in their high school diploma on the same day. One of our friends did that. So keep in mind that there's a little tension in that 2% between what you can see on campus or in your own programs enrolled and what you're going to see being taught potentially at the high school level. Now let's take a look at spring enrollment changes year over year and what programs are growing fastest. Allied Health topped the list with 32% growth. We have 5 healthcare programs at the associate level in our top 10 in terms of growth. Respiratory therapist, radiation therapy, social work, and human services, all up well over 15%. We have trades programs going over 20%, firefighting, HVAC, building construction site management, and airframe air mechanic tech. I am seeing more and more interest and also jobs in this whole aerospace area. So it's something to keep an eye on. If you guys aren't in that, I would take a look at aerospace engineering, a lot of the technical and CTE programs associated with it. It seems to be a real thing at this point, not just sort of a science fiction story we're all listening to. And finally, political science and government in general made our list. Bachelor's programs, not such a good news story, but still growing, up 1%. They too would have an issue. Probably most of this growth at this point is dual enrollment, but still up. So I'm encouraged by that. The cliff has not occurred yet. Keep in mind, it wasn't supposed to occur until 2026. So it may yet come to pass. What's growing? Spring enrollment, specifically, not as much health at the bachelor's level. We've got health sciences general and exercise physiology, both up over 10%. Then we turn to engineering with 4 programs in the top 10. Electrical, electronics engineering, construction engineering tech, civil engineering general, and mechanical engineering, again, all up over 10%. And a couple of programs from the business world, accounting and logistics and supply chain management, up 11%. So I'm going to pause for a moment, and you might think to yourself, well, why does a top 10 matter? There are over 1,000 programs that we track at the bachelor's level. What is the importance of keeping track of 10? Well, what you find here is in many data sets is an 80-20 rule, a Pareto rule, where a handful, 20% typically, of items dictate the trend for the entire sample. In higher ed, it's even more extreme. As I recall, about 10% of programs drive over 100% of growth. So if you're not in these high-performing programs, it's very difficult to grow because the rest of the portfolio is actually declining. Now let's take a look and see what's going on at the graduate level. My chart has stalled. I apologize. One second. Okay. So spring enrollment at the master's and doctoral level, down slightly. You could really argue it's flat, which it pretty much is. Here, at least we don't have to worry about dual enrollment. That's not a thing, but we have a pretty healthy level here. I'm actually pleasantly surprised that it's only down 0.1%, given the dramatic decline in international enrollment. That may continue to roll through these numbers as the folks who didn't enroll become a larger proportion of the total over time. But it's not that true at the graduate level, especially masters. You know, it's only a 2-year program typically, so those results will occur fairly quickly. So again, I think this is actually fairly good news for graduate programs, given the potential damage that could have been done by the decline in online. And what is going on? Which programs are growing at the doctoral level and masters? We have health dominating the list. Applied behavior analysis, family practice nursing, social work, mental health counseling, nursing practice, and healthcare administration and management. A couple of these are up over 10%, applied behavior and family practice nursing. The rest, and we got a couple here nearly 10%, and then closer to 5% for nursing practice and healthcare administration. Nothing else at the graduate level is up over 7%. The highest number here is for special ed teaching. We have some coming in over 5%, biomedical sciences and library science, and finally law with 4% growth. Now let's turn to international. I stole a little bit of my thunder, and all of you probably already know this is not going to be great news. Indeed, it isn't. International page views are down 22%. Please keep in mind this data excludes China, which would be the number one on the list if we had data for it. But typically, this data supplier can't do China, so it's not in our data set. This is not that bad compared to prior months. Again, it's sort of best of the worst. Being down just 22% looks pretty good. And however, this isn't the first year it's been down. So we're actually way off last year. You see the mid blue lines here. Continuing throughout this, down 60% last year. So think of it as 60% plus another 22% decline. So international demand is not recovering. It's actually continuing to decline off a much lower base than we were at just 2 years ago. Highest paid view countries, not surprising, India tops the list. I say it's not surprising, but actually it is. When I go back through this, you would expect India to be very high in the list, but typically it is not number one. I've seen Nepal often in the number one spot, some of the African countries in the top 3 or 5. So India and Mexico, or Mexico in particular, is really a new entrant on this list. And India is much higher than it has been traditionally. So some real changeover in where the interest is in coming to the US for higher education. What degrees are people looking for? And when I saw this, I was actually quite surprised because I would expect engineering-related subjects, software development, to be really at the top of these lists. And it's there, but not nearly as much as I would have expected, especially at the graduate level. When you look down this list, we've got design and visual communication, organization leadership, psychology, sustainability studies, international relations, and finally, one relatively technical program, aircraft and maintenance. So, you know, that again, sort of a distant 10th. So very different list than I'm accustomed to seeing here. On the bachelor side, not quite so different. We've got civil engineering, engineering general, electrical engineering, some biology, bioengineering. So this is more what I would think of in computer science. It is led by business. We've got psychology in there as well. And we've got some linguistics. This is pretty common, actually, for what I think is not a very popular program in the US, quite common in among our international students. Now, let's take a look at Coursera. And here is your first opportunity to participate in our guessing game. What types of programs are most popular on Coursera at this point? Please enter your thoughts in the chat. Oh, come on, everybody can't say AI. Any other thoughts? History, yeah. Oh, we wish. I'm a history major, so I do wish. And I have to give you credit, everyone. The audience was very right. 8 of the top 10 programs in Coursera right now are AI. Now, why do we look at Coursera? Why does this matter? It's a great question. Some of you may be on Coursera, but this is not going to be, Coursera itself is not going to be a material part of your institutions. What I believe it is a leading indicator of what people are interested in, both because the programs often they're really not programs or courses, often get introduced here very quickly when something is hot. Second, it's where people go especially for technology programs. So it gives us a glimpse into what people are interested in that may not yet be offered by traditional colleges and universities because it takes time to develop a program in traditional university and approvals and so forth. So in Coursera, it can be up and running almost overnight. So what this tells us is if you're looking for growth, AI is the place to go. I know there's tremendous resistance to it on campus, both at the faculty and the student level, for a variety of reasons, ranging from its ecological impact to its potential impact on employment to the threat to humanity. But, and I could address each of those on a different webinar if you'd like. And I do think many of those concerns are very real and valid. So as we approach this, at least at Gray, we do try to address those concerns. For example, our systems are electricity, carbon neutral, and they're becoming water neutral. They're not there yet, but we're on Google as a platform for most of our work. And Google has stated that it will be water neutral to positive by 2030. Otherwise, these data centers really do consume an enormous amount of water. And judging from the reservoirs in Massachusetts, we haven't got a lot to spare. Even after the heavy rains we've had, they're very down, and we're not alone in that either in the U.S. or, for that matter, in Europe. So I don't mean to dismiss the concerns when I say that AI is probably the growth opportunity for higher ed in our lifetime. We certainly have not seen anything grow this rapidly in my lifetime. That includes the web. It grew very fast, but not this pace. Mobile grew fast, but not as fast as the web, and that didn't grow. So this is a very rapidly growing field with a ton of opportunity for AI courses and programs. Workspace skills that employers need. I was surprised to see Google Workspace at the top of the list. Then, of course, we have 4 AI things on here: AI personalization, AI workflows, AI-powered creativity. What did I miss? Oh, and Google Gemini is Google's AI platform. Look at these growth rates, up over 600% in terms of interest and demand, so by employers. So a huge amount of demand for people with AI skills. That's not the only thing, though. We've got report writing, product planning, and performance analysis up substantially as well. I'm sorry, I skipped to hardware troubleshooting. That's an evergreen program, field and need. Visual storytelling also up. That feels very new to me. I suspect that it is related to AI in the sense that it is now possible to create visual stories much more rapidly and without the traditional skill and years of training required to draw or produce a decent video that we're all accustomed to. Those things can now be done much more rapidly. Although I will say that a lot of the stuff I see produced by AI is actually pretty lousy, but it's sure better than anything I could produce by hand. So now let's take a look at some employment indicators. Job postings are up 28%. I've said this before, I'll say it again, but we've done everything we can to screw up the U.S. economy, and it's a juggernaut. It just continues to grow, and job postings continue to rise. Much of this growth is AI, but not all. So it's a very powerful economy at this point.
Bob, I have an interesting question for you from our chat. What are the demographics of typical Coursera users?
No, I'm not sure. Well, typical is a funny word. It depends a ton on the course. So if you're in the technical courses, I believe you're looking at people at work trying to build skills. But if I were a student, I might well want some certificates for Coursera on my resume if the school isn't issuing certificates in my field. So I think there are probably some student learners on there. Frankly, from grade school on up, they could be taking courses on Coursera if they have the aptitude and will to do that. So then there's the other end of the spectrum. There are courses offered on Coursera that appeal to an often overlooked group of people. I say that because I'm one of them, what I lovingly call the silver segment. And that is people, at the end of their career, or even after their career, who want to learn, want to remain intellectually active, and they'll often take very different kinds of courses. So we saw for a couple of years a surge in interest in religion, for example. I haven't seen that recently. People looking for the meaning of their life, taking things like philosophy, no expectation that they're going to generate earnings from it, but truly just in the game to learn. So yes, Holly, I'm cheering too. So, I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And keep in mind that many of those folks have money. So it is possible to charge, for some of them, very high prices, have no discounting, and still have students. So one of my favorite programs here is actually one I learned from a client a few years ago. It was a writing program offered at the graduate level. I believe it was a doctoral program. And it was $60,000 a year. No discounts, thank you very much. And they had professional, relatively famous writers who came in and helped to teach it. And the concept was to take people in retirement, affluent people in retirement, very targeted again, and who believed they had a novel in them, and to help them write that novel. So I don't know that I'm going to take on anything quite that expensive in my retirement, but that program, for example, would be very interesting to me. But there are a number of others that you could offer in that group. As I mentioned, philosophy would probably be one of them, where there, I think, be a lot of interest in the silver segment. I suspect art is another field where there are people who, much like the person who thinks they have a novel in them, thinks they might have a good painting in them as well. And then there's art history, where I think there are a lot of people as they get older who are much more interested in history. Military history would be another one where you see fans of all ages looking at that. So that's a little bit more than an answer to what's popular on Coursera. If you'd like to see more depth on Coursera, we do have it across all their courses, so you can see exactly what people are looking for. They don't report demographics, unfortunately, but you can see the courses that people are selecting, and we have the trend as well. So what's growing in terms of jobs? Software development. Now, keep in mind that we've all seen forecasts that jobs for software developers are going to be in decline. Everybody heard that? Please, if you're in the chat and you haven't, let me know. I'll introduce you to the sources. But that's been the prediction for some time now. And I know that our software developers are using these tools. But the demand for software developers is the fastest growing occupation in our database. Industrial engineers are up 103% as well. Computer occupations, all other, up 46%. So one of the things I would tell you, I completely agree on the comment, Daniel, that software is going to grow, just use new tools. Not only that, they're going to be far more productive than they ever were before. one of my developers, we do our list of tasks. I think they're called PRs, pull requests or something like that. He's built an AI that goes and reads the pull request, the task, gives him a plan for how it's going to write the code. He approves the plan, it writes the code, and it gives him back to him to check. So it's effectively doing the coding. By the way, so far, I believe it's 100% of those chunks of code have been accepted and are working in our real system. So it's not only writing code, it's writing pretty good code. I suspect we're not giving it hugely complicated things to do yet, but still it's a huge productivity improver. That said, the backlog for my coders has not gotten shorter. If anything, it's gotten longer. And what's happening is the faster we go, the more ideas we have, the more improvements we need to make to the systems we built. So it's a weird thing where writing code is creating demand for more code. The faster we write it, the greater the demand. And that shouldn't be theoretically possible. And I suspect at some point we'll all get caught up in some giant ball of coding string, but that hasn't happened yet. You can see we got some engineers in demand for job postings. This is another one where the impact of automation I certainly overestimated it. I would have thought by now or soon we'd be replacing human truck drivers with machines. But so far, demand for truck drivers remains extremely strong. We've had a shortage for decades. That appears to be continuing with 97% growth in job postings for truck drivers. By the way, it's also very sensitive to the growth in the economy. Automotive service technicians and mechanics also up way up in double digits, up 37%. We do have some health here. Physical therapists up 93%. Job postings for licensed practical nurses up 48%. Medical assisting up 38%. By the way, all of you are thinking about Workforce Pell. Medical assisting is a very intriguing thing there, though you might have trouble with the earnings targets, the ROI. Which skills are growing in demand in the US? We have business operations tech, operational excellence, operational efficiency. So a lot of operations stuff in terms of skills. This has been pretty persistent over the last 18 months to see these very, I would consider them sort of back office. They were unglamorous, but are increasingly important functions as we move from, for example, physical storefronts to virtual. Things like operational efficiency and supply chain become extremely important. You see supply chain here, automation, 79% growth, tooling and manufacturing, 77% growth. We have a couple of softwares here, artificial intelligence, predictably enough, Python, and agility, which is a development framework. And finally, crisis response. I've been waiting for this one to start to pick up. I think this is a real opportunity for higher ed. As we have more fires and natural disasters, we're going to need more people who are trained in how to respond to these emergencies, which must be enormously complex. You know, if you come to a city, been a massive fire, how do you even begin bringing that city back up? What do you do about the plumbing? What do you do about the electricity, the roads, the houses, the schools, the hospitals? It's a massive, very complex, multidisciplinary problem. There are programs in this, and as I say, I've been waiting for this to emerge as a more significant growth opportunity than it has been so far. So let's now do our second game. And here you're going to have the opportunity to guess what academic program I'm reviewing. I will tell you it's a tough one, but I hope some of you will figure it out. And if not, we will be grading on a curve. So if everyone fails, then everyone gets a prize. So I would encourage you to go ahead and use the link. And as we go through this, to enter your responses, what you think this program is. You're welcome to enter more than one response, but please don't try to enter all 1,000 programs in the hopes of hitting a winner. So let's talk about the program itself. It scores in the 92nd percentile for student demand. So this is way above average, not the very highest student demand, but still very respectable. Google search volume is only at the 71st percentile. So looking forward, the demand is not as strong as it is right now, where we're at the 94th percentile. Online completions, very strong 96th percentile performance. And some of on-ground online, in the top 10%. So keep in mind, we keep track of about 1,000 undergraduate programs, well over around 1,500 total, plus 6 degree levels. So this is one of the 100 best programs in terms of on-ground and online completions. However, we've got a very strange thing happening in our growth numbers. So Google searches are actually down. You see that's a 4th percentile result. So it's, in the slowest 40 of all the programs, declining 23,000 searches. In new student enrollment, it's actually the worst performing program in unit growth. So that's an accomplishment, a dubious one at best, but an accomplishment. And then we have overall completion volume, which is up. So you might well ask yourself, what's going on? How can completion volume be up if Google search is down and new student enrollment is down? And this comes back to a point I made earlier. Google is a forward-looking indicator of what people think they want to do in the future, and they're exploring programs, so they're searching. New student enrollment is an indicator of what people are doing right now, and fewer of them are enrolling in this program. Completion volume, first of all, is 2023 completions, because that's the most recent iPad. And second, it represents what people were looking for, 3 to 5 years before they finished, because that's when they picked their major. So we're looking at data about what students wanted back in 2020. So that's why you can see this disconnect between Google search, new student enrollment, and completions. One is backwards looking, one is forwards looking, and one is current. So they're likely to be out of sync from time to time when a program isn't growing or shrinking on a steady basis. And percentage numbers, very similar trend, down in the 2 leading indicators and up in Google. But we do have some good news down here at the bottom. International page views remain very strong at the 99th percentile. So we can't fill this one from the US, maybe we can fill it from India. 99th percentile for employment. So I believe, and now I'm going to give you a little hint, part of what's going on here is everybody said this program is going to get killed because of AI, and there'll be no jobs. The jobs beg to differ. Job postings are at the 94th percentile. BLS current employment is at the 93rd percentile. And job openings, a BLS number is at the 93rd percentile as well. We do see a little worrisome sign. 1-year historical growth is down 1%. Not huge, but still worrisome. BLS 3 years, though, is up 3%. And the forecast, you see there, is up 1.4%, which should be in the highest bracket for BLS future growth numbers. But as is more often than not the case, BLS isn't very good at actually estimating growth numbers. And by the way, nor is anybody else. It's almost impossible. Job postings for graduate, still very healthy at 2.1. That puts it to the 89th percentile. Job openings per graduate, 83rd percentile. Wages, pretty good, $86,000 a year for an entry-level job, 99th percentile. So one of the top 10 programs in our data set for pay. Median is good. You see it's starting to drop back a little bit at 104,000. It's only 95th percentile. Post-entry with a bachelor's, 96th, and with a master's, 97th percentile. Then we'll just jump down. Excuse me. Take a look down here. Percent in direct prep jobs. So what percentage of these people go into the jobs that they've trained for? The answer here is 47%. Interesting number. That's the 95th percentile. So let me just spend a minute on what that actually means. So how can it be that one of the programs that has the highest ratio of people going into direct prep jobs is that ratio is only 47%. Let me try saying that a clearer way. So 53% of the people who get this degree go on to do something for which they're not directly prepared. And that, by the way, is true for 95% of programs. And in fact, for many programs, it's considerably fewer who go on to direct prep. That number often gets down well below 10%. So this is the famous NCES, famous at least in my mind, crosswalk dilemma. Our direct prep jobs follow the NCES crosswalk. We do it two ways. And all these numbers up here are not based on the NCS crosswalk, by the way. They're based on our crosswalk. Why? Because of this phenomenon. The NCS crosswalk is only picking up half the jobs these people really do. And if you go to other fields, I'll take history. Almost no history graduates go into the fields that NCS believes they should go into. NCS only has 5 to 7 fields. One of them is museum guide. Yeah, Daniel, absolutely, you need your own. If you'd like one that we've labored over, give us a call. So what we found is that where history majors on NCS go into 10 occupations. When we look at real data from 30 million graduates, what they majored in, what they do, what we find is that history majors actually go into almost 500 different occupations, not 5 or 10. So that's, in my view, not a small error. It's a very large error, and it is endemic to most labor market data sources. So give it a careful look, depending on what data source you're using, because that data can be extremely misleading. It wildly underestimates the number of jobs for most graduates, and it also implicitly it gives incorrect data on wages, because of course it's picking up the wrong occupations, therefore it's picking up the wrong wages. So keep that in mind when you're working with labor market data. And if you'd like one that's actually based, I should say too, NCS will tell you right on its website that it's not based on empirical data. And it really isn't. If you like crosswalk and data that are based on empirical data, that's what we do. So our alumni data I mentioned, in this program, we have like 30 million graduates overall, not just in this program. And here's where they live. This gives you a pretty strong hint of what this program might be. Now, finally, there's competition. And one of the downsides of this program, you see it's only at the 63rd percentile. It's just above average. Campuses with graduates, we've got 82. That's as competitive as, 90% of programs are less competitive than that. Campuses with grads, year-over-year change, 5 new campuses added. That's gets at a very low percentiles for competition. 96% of programs have fewer new campuses than that. Institutions with online in-market students, we've got 13. And then we go down and jump down to median program completions, 9. That's about average, 62nd percentile, not terrible. Interesting problem here that median program completions are declining. So the programs that are out there are getting smaller, keeping in mind that the total number is not. So these 5 new schools are offsetting a small decline in the median program size. But this always worries me, because it means that if it's going down, that means that people who have programs are having trouble filling their seats. Now, Google cost per click, $30 a click. Now, keep in mind that if you could get a student for that, it would be a steal. But you really have to multiply that number by at least 100, and typically quite a bit more than that, in order to understand the relationship between a click and a student. So that's a $3,000 student that's associated with that, or more, in terms of the cost of acquiring that student. So that is a very high number. It's only 3% of our programs have a higher cost than that. National online percent of institutions, 12%, and percent of completions is 33%. So the online players are relatively few, but they are running way above average programs in terms of program size, to capture 12% of schools getting 33% share. So if you were in this program, you're going to see a lot of competition from online. Now let's put all that together. Still haven't given up the answer. Feel free to keep posting your entries. We got a little bit of new information here to help your guesses. This program is almost entirely bachelor's and master's. No completions below bachelor's level, a couple of certificates, and nothing to speak of at the certificate and doctoral level. And we know it's less expensive than average to teach. So it's at the 90th percentile in terms of average cost per student credit hour. and the 89th percentile in terms of median cost. Keeping in mind that our scores are always higher when something is better. So 90th percentile doesn't mean it's high cost. It means it's less expensive than 90% of programs. And you can see that this index 1.0 is average. So these two are running well below the average at 0.66 and 0.7. Okay, now for the big reveal. You ready? Anybody want to submit another guess? This is computer software engineering. So importantly, that is not exactly software development. Mary, you came very, very close. I haven't been able to look at the other responses, so I'll leave that to all of you, perhaps.
Bob, would you like me to share some of the responses we got?
Oh, sure.
Okay, we had some great, really close guesses. One interesting thing is we had a lot of guesses within the healthcare industry, and I think they all groaned a little bit when they saw that the average cost was lower. Yeah, so we had digital communications, webinar, healthcare related, as I said, psychology, engineering, computer science, a lot of nursing, video game development, software developer, computer science, cybersecurity, and one interesting one, logistics supply chain.
All good guesses. And by the way, all those are very healthy programs. So I understand why people would expect that this might be one of them. Really good guesses. Anybody who got anywhere in the computer software development, I think you won. This is a pretty niche program, though. It actually isn't software development per se. It's using scientific and mathematical principles to design, analyze, validate, implement, and maintain software. So these are math guys exploring software using mathematical principles, which is pretty different than just writing Python code. Though honestly, they do have to write code as well. So that's the program. Congratulations to all of you who got close. It is a tough one to guess. I certainly wouldn't have guessed it. So now let me switch gears to some other things that we've been working on and thinking about, what I think of as the cutting edge. First of all, many of us are facing enrollment challenges, if not declines. And we've got a squeeze coming from demographics, changes in student preferences, and competition from online. There are some huge players out there competing for eyeballs, running massive recruiting engines and marketing that often have the ability to spend more in your local market than you can afford to spend, even though they may be located 2,000 miles away. So the question is, how can you win in that environment? And we believe one of the tactics, not the only one, is to really get thoughtful about your marketing spend by zip code, by location within your overall market, and go after those areas. So you can see on this particular map, we're looking at the left-hand side is what's happening in the market, and the darker blues are high areas where there's a lot of enrollment. This enrollment, by the way, is coming from our data on enrollment, which includes 97% of students, and that's that data that was updated as recently as last spring. On the right-hand side, you can see the client. They're doing pretty well over here in some pretty important areas. But if you really spend some time, as I did shortly before this, you can begin to see up here, there's a lot of demand in this little corridor. And when I look at the client, they're not hitting very well over there. So when I take their share and analyze it, take their enrollment, divide it by total enrollment, and then figure out what their average is. And then I can start to highlight the areas where they have below average share, which we believe translates into an opportunity for growth. And you can see that corridor here pops out as an area where they're underperforming and should be able to perform at a much higher level. So that's the concept. It's very simple. You just need some data. You need enrollment, which we have, and your own enrollment shared with us, and then we can calculate this out for you. You need that students by zip code, by the way, in order to populate this. But it's a pretty simple request that I think can reveal some very substantial opportunities. As an example, this is slightly dummied up data, but it's realistic in terms of volume. It identified areas where there was potential to increase to add 2,000 students if they could achieve their normative market share. So for them, that would have been nearly a doubling in their student body. I have no doubt that they won't be able to achieve that entire amount, but it is a new way of looking at the market and revealing opportunities. So let me summarize for you. In June 2026, Google searches fell, but it fell at a slightly slower rate than prior months. So I believe that indicator is beginning to stabilize. As I mentioned, I don't think that means there's 30% less demand for higher ed. Drafting design tech you see here, I removed it from the core presentation. That number is too high to be realistic, and I will remove it from the final draft that we post for you to download as well. In spring 2026, new enrollment was flat to up across all degree levels. I'm counting the master's and doctoral as flat. Certificate, CJ had the highest year-over-year growth. Allied health was very popular in the associates and bachelor space. At the bachelor's level, registered nursing had the highest growth, and master's and doctoral, we saw applied behavior analysis at the top. Job postings continue to tear, up 28% year over year, and the software developers were the fastest growing occupation. Student demand and employment for bachelor's and supply chain was strong, but it is very competitive. And finally, analyzing market share can reveal substantial opportunities for growth. Now, what I'd like to do now, we have a couple of minutes left, is share an idea with you. It is just an idea, and I really would welcome your feedback on it. Many of you have been wrestling with this question of what is Workforce Pell going to mean going forward? It has some very specific requirements. 70% of the graduates from a given program have to get jobs within a certain period, 1 year after graduation, as I recall. It has to have existed for a year, so you have those statistics. 70% of the students in a program have to graduate, and there are several other requirements, in particular ROI, that's return on investment in education. So that would be their tuition, and then the incremental amount they earn above a high school degree when they graduate. So it occurred to me that there are tools that we have that could be used to identify Workforce Pell programs and evaluate the ones that you have. So let's start with evaluating the ones that you have. I don't know how many of you have already done this analysis to figure out which programs are going to qualify for Workforce Pell, and importantly, which programs you might want to launch that could qualify. There are some really interesting things. They can't, what's going on here is it, for the first time, allows very short non-degree programs to be eligible for Pell. So now we have the chance to teach skills in short courses that could be funded up to 100% by the government. Pell maximum $7,000, but that's actually a lot of money for a short program. So I think of things like truck driving, where the program is, I'm not going to get this number exactly right, but 90 days to 3 months, traditionally funded out of unemployment kinds of programs at the local level workforce training, now becomes eligible for Pell. So I think there's an opportunity to launch short programs targeted at very specific occupations that will be funded 100% by Pell. And to me, that's a huge opportunity as long as you can offer those programs for less than the cost of a Pell scholarship. So also potentially very impactful for the workforce. So that's my concept. I think there are tools we've built that may be relevant. For example, we have something we call Remix. And what we could do in a Pell context is take the courses you already have, remix them, reconfigure those courses to create a workforce program that could be eligible for this new Pell grant. So that, in other words, you may already have the courses you need in order to offer a new program or certificate that would be eligible for Pell. Again, any reaction to that, I would very much welcome. Is it a good idea, a bad idea? Is Pell something you're even concerned about right now? This Workforce Pell in particular. Thoughts are welcome. Please feel free to put them in the chat. And if you think I'm crazy, you won't be the first person. And you may even have a point based on my own personal experience. So I'm going to stop there. Questions are welcome. Scott, that's a good point. I do suspect that depending on the Pell program we're talking about, um, the student really would be fairly unlikely to re-enroll in a regular old bachelor's program, for example. But I do that. I wasn't aware of that. I think it's an important caveat that um, Pell eligibility and the money they use for a program like this would count against their lifetime Pell eligibility. Any other thoughts? Job secured alignment with a program SIP. Yeah, I don't know what those rules are. That is part of what the old, NCS crosswalk was used for, which is terribly frustrating because it's so unrealistic. And I believe that I'm going to have to go study this more. I believe that they're really just looking at wages now rather than zip codes and occupations. So as long as the student makes money after they graduate, that's okay, regardless of whether they're going into the particular field they're trained for. That's hugely important because let's take auto tech. And auto tech learns how to handle HVAC. They learn electrical. They learn mechanical. They're very well trained to actually go become a building engineer, which is a well-paid job that you don't have to slide around under cars to do. Though there are a lot of awkward things you do have to do in air conditioning and so forth. But traditionally, if they went in and became a building engineer, that didn't count for the institution, which is silly because they probably get paid more as a building engineer than they would as an auto mechanic. So I think the new criteria are all about income after graduation, not about whether the occupation aligns with the zip code. So I'll double check that, but I think that's where that stands. With that, thank all of you again. I really appreciate your joining me. Love doing these and very much appreciate your attending. It's a huge help to Gray and look forward to seeing you again next month.